For more than 2,000 years, one woman has refused to remain silent in the halls of history. Her name is not just written in books. It is whispered in classrooms, shouted in blockbuster films, and passed down in stories from generation to generation. Cleopatra. Why do we still remember her? Not because she built the largest empire, not because she won the most battles on blood-soaked fields. We remember her because she disrupted the balance of power in a world that was never designed to listen to women. History, often written by the victors, remembers her as a symbol, a temptation, a warning to the ambitious. But history rarely pauses long enough to ask, who was she truly? And even more rarely does it ask, what did she actually look like? Tonight, we are not chasing legend. We are not chasing the fantasies of Hollywood. We are chasing evidence. Because somewhere, buried beneath centuries of myth, political spin, and fear, there was a real human face. That face belonged to Cleopatra the Great. Not a goddess, but a human being, a strategist, a mother, and the final Pharaoh of Egypt. Join me as we travel back in time, stripping away the dust of prejudice to look directly into the eyes of the most dangerous woman of the ancient world. Cleopatra lived in a dangerous time, not only because of war, but because of memory. In the ancient world, to control history was to control power. Rome understood this better than anyone. When Rome defeated an enemy, they did not just conquer land, they conquered narratives. Imagine a massive propaganda machine working at full capacity. Statues destroyed, names rewritten, stories bent to serve the glory of the victor. Cleopatra was not just defeated militarily, she was defeated symbolically. Emperor Augustus, her greatest enemy, could not allow future generations to remember her as a capable ruler. To admit she was a worthy rival would be to admit Rome had been afraid of a woman. So instead, she was transformed from a strategist into a seductress, from a leader into a lover. And when that transformation was complete, her real face no longer mattered. The world didn't need to know what she looked like when she was managing the economy or negotiating treaties. They only wanted a face that fit the role of the villainous temptress that Rome had cast her in. Searching for her true face today is like investigating a crime scene that has been scrubbed clean for 2,000 years. If you were raised on modern images of Cleopatra, you were not raised on history. You were raised on fantasy. Look at the paintings from the Renaissance. They show her with pale skin, European features, and soft, exaggerated beauty. Then came the age of cinema. Elizabeth Taylor, Vivian Leigh, films that draped her in gold and framed her purely as an object of desire. But these images tell us more about the cultures that created them than about Cleopatra herself. Hollywood did not ask, what did she look like? Hollywood asked, what do we want her to represent? And the answer was always the same: beauty, seduction, danger. They needed a femme fatale, and they forced Cleopatra into that mold. But history is rarely as simple as a movie script. The reality is grittier, sharper, and far more interesting than any blockbuster. It is time to turn off the Hollywood cameras and turn on the lights of archaeology. When historians search for Cleopatra's face, they eventually arrive at one uncomfortable truth: the coins. These are the closest things we have to official portraits. They were minted during her lifetime, likely approved by her administration, and They are not flattering. On these coins, Cleopatra appears severe. Look closely. Her jaw is strong, almost masculine. Her nose is prominent, hooked, and commanding. Her expression is unreadable. There is no seductive smile. There is no softness. At first glance, these images shock modern viewers, who are used to the beauty of Elizabeth Taylor. But in the ancient world, this made perfect sense. Coins were not Instagram. Coins were propaganda. They were declarations of authority. Cleopatra needed to look powerful, not beautiful. She intentionally had artists emphasize features that resembled her father, Ptolemy XII, to assert her legitimacy, to tell the world, "I am the rightful heir." In her world, beauty did not command armies. Power did. And the face on that coin is the face of power. If coins give us the shape, ancient texts give us the presence. Ancient historians had many things to say about Cleopatra. Her beauty, surprisingly, was not one of them. Plutarch, the historian who chronicled her life in the most detail, wrote quite bluntly that her physical beauty was not in itself so remarkable that none could be compared with her. But he spent pages describing something else. Her voice, her wit, her intelligence. He described her voice as an instrument of many strings, able to switch between languages with ease. He described the way she listened, the way she dominated a conversation without ever raising her voice. This is not the language of seduction. This is the language of influence. Cleopatra did not need to be the most beautiful woman in the room. She needed to be the most memorable. She captivated Caesar and Mark Antony not with her looks, but with the ability to make them feel that she was the only one who understood the scale of their ambition. Forget the lover, see the scholar. Cleopatra was educated in philosophy, science, rhetoric, and politics at the intellectual center of the world, Alexandria. While other monarchs partied, Cleopatra studied. She was the first and only ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty to learn to speak Egyptian fluently. She spoke Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and the languages of her neighbors. She could speak directly to mercenaries, to merchants, to diplomats without an interpreter. That is a kind of power few possess. She understood economics. She knew the value of Egyptian wheat to Rome's survival. She understood religion and how to use it to govern the masses. When foreign leaders met her, they did not meet a queen playing a role. They met a mind that could match and often outmatch their own. This was her real weapon. And this was what Rome feared most. They didn't fear her beauty. They feared her brain. So, genetically, what did she look like? Cleopatra was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty. These were Greek rulers, Macedonians, who had governed Egypt for centuries after the death of Alexander the Great. They were outsiders ruling an ancient land. And for most of their history, they married only within the family to keep the bloodline pure. However, Cleopatra was the first of her line to fully embrace Egypt. She didn't just learn their language. She dressed as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis. She performed the ancient rituals her ancestors had ignored. Her face, therefore, would have reflected this fusion. The sharp angular features and high bridge of her Greek ancestry, skin darkened by the fierce Mediterranean and North African sun, dark eyes lined with kohl to protect against the glare and disease, but also to create a gaze that hypnotized those she looked upon. She was not one thing, she was many. A woman standing between two worlds, East and West, ancient and modern. Now, close your eyes. Erase the image of Elizabeth Taylor. Erase the romantic oil paintings. When we strip away the fantasy and examine the evidence, a different Cleopatra emerges. Not soft, not delicate, not trying to please the viewer, but composed, focused, unyielding. This is the face of a woman who had to fight her own siblings for the throne, a woman who navigated her country through the violent storms of Roman expansion, a woman shaped by politics, not romance, a ruler forged by survival. This is the face history struggled to erase. So, in the end, what did Cleopatra really look like? She looked like power. And power is rarely beautiful to those who fear it. Do not remember her for a face that men desired. Remember her for a mind that once brought the world to its knees. In our next episode, we leave Egypt to turn to another legend, a man whose face marched across 3 continents, the greatest conqueror of all time, Alexander the Great.